First of all, we agree that almost everything we do takes place somewhere and becomes a special practice that shapes and is shaped by the social, economic, political, or cultural space of place, right? But how? Well, people mark with meaning the space in where they travel and their daily path within the impersonal built environment of the city, and then became personal when we connect that larger story within recurrent narratives, which are stories or incidents that, through repetition or practice, we transform into a place of meaning and value. And as more people and more do this, they collectively construct or produce that social space. Now, about the space configuration. This se puede leer como un ordenamiento idealizado de las relaciones sociales, as is mentioned in the chapter El libro del desarrollo written by our teacher, Dr. Larson. In this chapter is discussed the implementation of the program Ciudad Rural Sustentable in Santiago del Pinal, where through the reading of the words and symbols which are involved, we can recognize dualism between the modern and the traditional, between what is public and what is private, and the separation between genders, how is expressed the patriarchy, which is the notion of family, and even the level of morality that is expected just because of the use of space. Well, in general, we can see what is desirable, permitted, and what is prohibited. Now, where the above is visible? Well, according to this guy, Mark Auge, there are places and non-places, but both are instruments for measuring of sociality and symbolization of a given space. But let's see. For him, an anthropological place is any space in place with social bound inscriptions. For example, places with strict rules of residence, which are expectations that people must fulfill in order to belong. Other example is the collective history. Among these, we can include worship places. In general, these are places of meeting and exchange. So these are relational, historical, and concerned with identity. These kind of places are mapped geometrically, and there are certain routes between them. So it's in the road where we find the non-spaces. Non-places are spaces of circulation, consumption, and communication, and are defined partially by the words and text that they offer us. For example, a poster which said no smoking can say us a lot of things about certain group. Individuals interact with the text rather than with other individuals. Some examples of non-spaces are airports, railway stations, bridges, markets, and buses. But before finishing, the author mentions the possibility that globalization itself may be a non-space, considering globalization an out of space, because we think about and locate the universal to erase and found the local in order to affirm and change origins. Can you see the road? And if there are frontiers, he says that a frontier is not a wall, but is a threshold from communication. And crossing that threshold means to enter into a symbolic relation with the other. As a conclusion, I'm going to use a concept that I hope is able to summarize most of the information. The utopia. Why? Well, architects, which are those who design the impersonal buildings and how a space is ordered from it, we read in the web article, and I must be clear that I'm not talking just about the professional architects. They transmit in some way the expectations of a current system, ideology, or discourse. But also, in the process of that representation, the places acquire an utopian dimension that we expect to be materialized in some point of the future, like the Ciudad Rural Sustentable, that is expected to change the perception of their own families as equal and undivided units. And starting just by how the building looks, where the houses are, and who built and designed them. In the other hand, concerning to non-spaces, even if some says otherwise, in these spaces there are also chance to find a little bit of that utopia, since Auge uses an example that makes us identify how this can be possible with travelers, who while they're waiting in the bus station, being this a space where we allow ourselves to be uncertain and go on adventure to see what happens. And in addition to passivity and anxiety, hope and at the very last, expectations are evoked. So, the next time you ask yourself how to achieve productiveness by knowing your customers and employees in your workspace or company, or get to know how to develop promotion spaces, or disencourage power distance and individualism, for example, take a look at the places and non-places, and rethink how can you transform a social space by marking it, knowing which are the symbols and the meanings in a space, and which are the expectations that emerge since the known spaces.